I'd like to introduce you now to our speakers. Bidemi Afolabi is co-founder of Promotion Rewards, a data-enabled consumer engagement platform that helps brands understand and influence consumer behaviors. He is also passionate about decentralized technology and the democratization of data. Dr. Ciara Clancy is the founder and CEO of Beats Medical. Beats Medical is a medical device company which provides digital therapeutics to support the management and understanding of CNS and rare disease. The company partners with the pharmaceutical and payer industry globally and has offices in Lisbon and Dublin. Ciara completed her undergraduate and PhD in physiotherapy in Trinity. Her entrepreneurial work has been internationally recognized, including Cartier's Women's Initiative Awards laureate for Europe, Forbes 30 Under 30, finalist in the EY Entrepreneur of the Year Award, and European Commission's Women's Innovator Prize. Charlie Butler is the co-founder and co-CEO of Bounce Insights, a consumer research startup in Dublin that helps brands understand their consumers and make better decisions through an end-to-end marketing research platform. They currently employ a team of 15 and have raised 1.85 million in funding to date. While at Trinity, he studied global business and won the academic gold medal, as well as being nominated for Business Student of the Year, graduating in 2020. Finally, I'd like to welcome our MC for this evening. A native of County Meath, Ken Finnegan is the Chief Executive Officer at Tangent, Trinity's Ideas Workspace. Tangent is a transformative learning environment that fosters creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship at all levels for Trinity, its partners, lifelong learners, and those brave enough to take the first steps to turn ideas into impact. Ken is also a board member of the Public Service Innovation Advisory Board, an advisory board member of the RDI Hub in Killorglin, and a member of the Dublin and Eastern Regional Exec. Prior to joining Tangent, Ken held a number of senior executive positions, including chief technologist, in IDA Ireland. So I'd like to thank you again for joining us, and I'll hand you over to Ken.
Hello, everybody. You are very welcome here today. We've got a great session and lineup of really inspiring and successful entrepreneurs that have come from Trinity, and two of whom I know very well. So maybe as ways of introduction, what we'll do is maybe do a quick round table and hear kind of like who you are, what your company is, and then we'll get into kind of like the questions. So Ciara, if you want to kick off, that would be great.
Everyone, hi, Ken, delighted to be here. So Beats Medical is a digital therapeutics company. We specialize in the delivery of outcome measurement and assessments and therapies for central nervous system conditions, kind of like neurological conditions, and rare disease. We've been on the market for, the business was founded in 2012, so just over 10 years now. And we've scaled our product with global partnerships with both the pharmaceutical and the payer industry, and have had significant impact on end users' lives, most importantly, those of people with Parkinson's disease, developmental coordination disorder, and other rare central nervous system conditions.
Thanks a million, Ciara. Charlie, tell us all about yourself and Bounce.
Yeah, tough to follow Ciara with pretty much anything, but my name is Charlie. I'm co-founder, co-CEO of Bounce. We are a consumer research platform, so we work with the likes of Diageo and Tesco and Coca-Cola to bring better products to the market. I think simply what we do is we try and put consumers' voice at decision-making tables in these big brands, and we do that by providing them with an always-on access to consumers for their opinions, for their thoughts, for their feedback, whether it's packaging or pricing or how are they feeling about the cost of living crisis. We bring brands closer to consumers, and we do that through direct feedback through consumer research. So we provide a platform, we provide data and recommendation, and we provide consultancy to anything sold in a supermarket is kind of how we narrow ourselves down.
Super, Charlie. Thanks for that. And Bidemi.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me. So my name is Bidemi. I'm the co-founder of Promotion Rewards, and what we do. So we're a consumer engagement platform, and we've developed a mobile app that allows users to scan any receipt from any store, and then we process this using AI. We create a digital consumer profile, and we allow brands to go out and target consumers based on where they are on their purchase journey. So essentially, we help brands move away from a one-size-fits-all approach and allow them to treat individuals as individuals, essentially. And we work with consumer packaged goods brands. We've soft launched 3 months ago, And since then, in the last 90 days, we've captured over 1.2 million euros worth of consumer sales. So this is the total volume of sales that we've aggregated and analyzed, and we're helping our brands gain their unfair market share amongst other brands.
Well done. As our audience can surely see, we have an incredible lineup of successful entrepreneurs here today. So the title today is The Journey of an Idea. And for anybody that's been in tangents, it's like the second you come into tangent, you're faced with that mantra, that logo. We have the journey of an idea. For a lot of students here in Trinity, it's their first steps into kind of like turning their idea into action. And I guess that's the first question that I'd love to hear from all of you is like, so what was that spark, the initial spark where you're like, okay, I see a problem and I have a great solution or a potential solution. It may have been very different from where you are now, but can you tell us about that journey of an idea? Ciara, maybe you can share your journey with us.
Sure, yeah. So I remember the exact moment I decided I wanted to find Beats Medical. I was working as a physiotherapist in a hospital, and my next client, a person with Parkinson's disease, was 20 minutes late. I went out to find him stuck, frozen at the entrance, unable to move. This is a common symptom of Parkinson's called freezing, and he was coming into me for a therapy that would help him overcome these symptoms. The only problem was it was only available in hospitals because it needed to be individually prescribed to their symptoms on that day. He needed this therapy at home, not just in the hospital. And I wanted to found Beats Medical to make care and assessments like this more accessible, more available, to help empower people to live more independent lives.
And Ciara, just to understand, where you were working in the hospital at the time, was this during your PhD or was this after your PhD? Where in your academic life, if you were
in between? So I think in terms of the journey of idea, I think it's so important to spend time with the problem as much as you can, before going into that solution side of things. So that's exactly what I did. Spent time with the problem. This was in between my undergraduate and my PhD. So while understanding the problem, I also started a PhD. I was lucky to be supported by Trinity Schools, which supported my ongoing research in what was, I suppose, an unrelated but relevant field in terms of research, data and understanding of illness and what predicts and improves the outcomes of any intervention you have. So yeah, somewhat in between, the gap between undergraduate and postgraduate. And I suppose the biggest piece here is, for me, it was about immersing with the idea for with the problem as much as I could before going into the idea and solution straight away.
And that absolutely makes sense. A lot of the approaches that we take around design thinking is empathy. You know, the first step is understand and be able to articulate clearly what the problem is. Charlie, I've been in Trinity for about 4 years now, and I think you were on our very first cohort of Launchbox. Maybe you can share your journey with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So our story is always quite funny because it started with a gross embarrassment and failure, which was when I went into Trinity. It was the catalyst of like, I wanted to work on an idea. So myself and a few other friends in university, mix of computer science and business students, we started working on the ideas generally, kind of evenings, weekends and that sort of thing, alongside our degree. And we actually worked on an idea for months. I think I saw in the attendees is Robert Leonard, who was one of the guys who worked alongside me on this, who's now over in London. But we were working on a completely different idea. I was a bartender in university, and when I started caring more about my degree and wanting to do a part-time job that would help me get a job when I left university, I started thinking, well, why isn't there a platform that connects part-time students in the degrees that they're doing with SMEs that need their support? If you're a computer science student, why aren't you doing 2 days of coding with Bidemi or, whatever it is? And that was kind of the original idea. We did the exact opposite of what you should do, which is what Ciara just mentioned, which is we started building a solution. We started building an MVP. We started going after, we're going to raise investment. I think I was 19 or 20. And we pitched to a group of investors and got completely laughed out of the room. They were just like, you have spoken to no customers. You have done no research. Great initiative, but best of luck, guys, go again. And when we went back then and tried to do research with students, we realized very quickly there isn't a sane person in the world who would ever do a survey. I don't know anyone, I knew none of my groups of friends who would ever participate in research. anyone who did, I don't think is representative of a population. They were doing it for wrong reasons, or they're trying to scam it, or bots, or whatever it was. And when we were trying to do that research, realized there was a massive problem there. And if I couldn't do it as a startup with friends who were that age, I was like, well, how did Coca-Cola do this? How did Diageo do this? And then we went and I spoke to all the research agencies in Dublin, because I was like, well, they must know. And I was still thinking on this other idea with my co-founders. And after speaking with them, I realized they didn't have a solution either. They were kind of like panels, is what is called when you're doing research. So panels of consumers. We realized that they didn't have a solution. So our original business idea, actually, if you remember back in the day in Launchbox, was we were going to solve this like respondent consumer engagement problem. We were going to build an app, and we were going to have a better experience, a better way of doing surveys, a better way of rewarding people. So it was actually what sparked Bounce Insights in its original form, was the failure of a previous startup combined with a bit of doggedness about, once I'd started building something, I knew it was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So when the previous startup was failing, or the idea was failing, we almost were like, we're doing something. And then that seemed like a massive problem. And then we stumbled into that. And then the rest is history. We changed about 15 times since, but that was kind of the inception, so to speak.
I think there's a really great point there, though, this idea of actually, when you start to do that inquiry, trying to understand what the problem is, this idea of being able to pivot. We become so wed, sometimes we become so wed to an idea that it's really hard to kind of like actually step back when we're given this type of data. But being able to pivot is something that we have to do as entrepreneurs. You know, it's
I think it helps us then pivot and iterate further, because we had absolutely no ego attachment to the problem we were solving, the customers we were selling to, or the business model canvas, as you get taught about in innovation and entrepreneurship. We were not wedded to any one of those 7 segments, but we just built our whole business on customer feedback consistently. So that first failure kind of almost set up a culture or a philosophy within Bounce of, you're never right, like you're never fully validated, and then constantly trying to build off that, which kind of helped us then.
It's a constant evolution. One question for you, Charlie, just before I move on to Bademi. If I remember correctly, you did pitch for your original idea to be on Launchbox, and it was during on Launchbox when you did pivot from the original idea to.
So Brian, who we co-founded it with, actually pitched that idea the previous year on Launchbox and in the test incubator, and got rejected from both. So that was like an early sign that it wasn't a very good idea. And then from there, we kind of just didn't take no for an answer and changed it until Launchbox eventually let us in. So that was kind of how that went.
And you know, and I'm going to ask a few questions about resilience later on. So I think you've set that one up nicely. Demi, tell us your journey so far with promotion. Again, 2020, is it? Was the year when you were with Tangent? Yeah,
2020, the online year.
The online year, that's right.
Similar story to Charlie. So myself and my co-founder, we both studied pharmacy. We're both pharmacists now, and we never really thought that entrepreneurship was for us. It wasn't until one of my friends, David Ola, another OG Tangent, he applied and he got into Launchbox, and he studied human health and disease or genetics or something like that. So seeing him do it kind of inspired me. And then the year 2020. One of my friends, he applied as well, Timmy, and I spoke to him. We were in Subway and I had a chat with him, and he told me he was applying. And I was like, Timmy, if you're applying, like I should apply too. So I spoke to my co-founder, Lauren, and we decided that we wanted to apply for Launchbox. We didn't have an idea, didn't try to solve any problem. You know, we want to apply for Launchbox. We want to be entrepreneurs. And so we started to brainstorm, come up with different ideas. I was like, first of all, Lauren, we need to come up with a name. And then Lauren came up with the name Promotion. I was like, that's a terrible name, but it'll work for now. And then we started to come up with an idea. So our initial idea was advertising on bicycles. So individuals have their own bicycle. We put an attachment onto it, and they cycle around, they get paid. Brands get exposure, users get paid, and it's encouraging an eco-friendly, healthy lifestyle. So we got into Launchbox and we did quite well. We ended up winning Launchbox with this idea. And then after Launchbox, about a month in, we felt a bit lost. We didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't really have any guidance anymore. And then we decided to keep going, and then we started to speak to potential customers. So we spoke to a major CPG company, and the marketing director loved the idea. He was really into it, and he wanted to run a campaign with us. Then we started to look into the logistics of it, and we realized that it wouldn't be a profitable business, and it's not a scalable business either, as well. And then we started to speak to this marketing director, and he kept on asking us about the users, like who are the people who are cycling, like what insights can you give us here? Is there a way that we can push products, and do all that kind of stuff? And this coincided with our 8-month placement. I was in Boots for 8 months, and we were just focused on retail the whole time. And they were obsessed with consumer insights, pushing products. And then we started to realize that what our initial idea, the cycling idea, was actually a vitamin. It wasn't a painkiller, And if your startup, if your business is a vitamin, it's a nice to have, it's not a need to have. So then we pivot to what we're doing now, where we gather data and we allow brands to use that data to achieve KPIs, be it sales, insights, whatever it may be. So I think it's really important that if you're coming up with an idea or you want to be in business, that you create something that's a painkiller. You're solving a problem that's keeping people up at night.
I mean, that's like really, really good advice there, and it's great to hear the pivots that you've taken. I have a question. I'm looking for advice from you now, right? Because when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship, especially within the university setting, and so I want, if there's any students listening to this that are not a business student or an engineering student, because they're the typical students that will look at entrepreneurship and kind of say, okay, I have an idea for a business. But coming from a pharmacy background, it's not your traditional route to look at to look at entrepreneurship as a route. You said that it was your peers that had encouraged you. Is there any advice that you'd give to kind of like people watching today, potential students watching today, that don't come from a traditional kind of like entrepreneurial program or background? Like, what should we do actually as Tangent, and what advice would you give to those students?
I think it's getting better over the years. There's another reason as well that I never applied. I'm a ethnic minority as well. And by seeing my friends David and Timmy apply, and David successfully getting into it, that really encouraged me. I think over the last 2 or 3 years now, we've seen more people from more diverse backgrounds, diverse be it their area of study. They could be more in the health fields and not just technology. I think it's really important that you see people who are like you doing something. That gives you great encouragement. And I think Tangent's doing great and doing that, giving the right people the opportunities and giving people a chance to act as a role model for the coming generations.
Great, and thank you for that. Right, so the next question, I guess maybe Demi, I'll stick with you. I'm going to put you under pressure at the moment because it's a nice lead in, and then Ciara, we move on. I'll ask you the same question, and it's you kind of mentioned it in your previous answer, Demi, about like, are you born with an entrepreneurial mindset, or did Trinity help develop that mindset?
I think Trinity absolutely helped me develop that mindset. I'm a strong believer that as humans, we are capable of doing anything that we set our minds to. I think for the most period of my life, initially I was a footballer in England. I came back, I studied pharmacy, and now I'm an entrepreneur. I wasn't born with any of those, but as long as you dedicate yourself and you're passionate and you're just willing to keep learning, keep failing and getting back up, that anyone can do anything. So I think if anyone that's listening to this wants to be an entrepreneur, you really can. You just need to just dedicate yourself to it, put in the hours, and be willing to fail, be willing to learn. Yeah, that's my answer. I hope I answered that, Ken.
Oh yeah, no, look, it's like if anybody knows me and follows me on any social media, I'm all about just do it, just take the first step. Ciara, same question to you. I'm really interested because it's like you were talking earlier on about immersing yourself in the problem. Mindset, or did Trinity kind of like generate that spark?
Yeah, I think Trinity played a big role. I mean, I met my chief medical officer being involved in a couple of Trinity societies. And I was very lucky to have a lot of mentors, both during my studies and also as an alumni network. So Dr. Emma Stokes, Dr. Fiona Wilson played a huge role in kind of shaping that curious, innovative mindset. And Sean Melly, who was previously our chairman, played a huge role as a previous chair of Trinity Business School, who unfortunately passed away last year. He played a huge role in shaping my entrepreneurial and business mindset. I really believe it's so important. You will never have all the skills. To Charlie's comment earlier, you're never right? Your growth is never done. But I think getting 20, 30 years experience overnight, it's just not going to happen. But finding those mentors, and, you know, for me, a lot of those mentors came from my Trinity network, made a huge impact on being able to allow myself to grow as quickly as the company was growing. And that's so important, that you are, you don't have your company outpace your own personal and professional growth, because running a company with 2 or 3 people versus a company with 50 employees, it's a very different role that you hold, and you need to grow as fast as you can to be able to step into those shoes.
And really, I guess what you're saying there is the ecosystem was critical for you. It's like creating an environment where you can meet, I don't want to say like-minded people, but actually, to Demi's point earlier on, a diversity from a knowledge and academic perspective helps create those sparks. Something that we strive, like that, I don't think we ever get it perfect, or we can never get it perfect, but you create the environment where people can collide, if you want, with different backgrounds. And Charlie, entrepreneurial mindset. Were you selling something at the age of 8, or when you came to Tangent Trinity, that's what initiated the entrepreneur in you?
Yeah, I mean, Trinity was quite cathartic for me, because I was there was kind of 2 catalysts for me. One was like both my parents were entrepreneurial in their own right, and I think when I was in school, I was always really frustrated, because I think, similar to Demi, probably nowhere near as good, but sport was like my big background, and where I channeled all of my kind of frantic, immature teenage male energy. And I had kind of a career-ending injury when I was like 15, and for a few years I really struggled with my mental health after, because I didn't really know where to channel that kind of type A personality and energy. And all the talks that came in were accountants, lawyers, doctors, consultants, and there weren't even people coming in to talk about trades or entrepreneurship or all these other routes. And I knew that's what I kind of was more interested in. And then when I went to Trinity, it was cathartic, because I was seeing Iseult Ward, I was seeing Eric Risser. To Demi's point, you could see these role models who kind of ripped up the standard playbook of what you do when you do a general business degree or pharmacy or whatever you're doing, physio, in university. And then that, coupled with, I remember Michael O'Leary came in and gave a talk. You can say what you want about Michael O'Leary, but he had said one thing in a talk in Trinity, which was, for the next 4 years, you're going to be surrounded by the smartest people you ever be surrounded with the least amount of responsibility, with the least amount of hours dedicated to your college degree. And he made the joke of, like, you could go out on a night out twice a week and you'll still have more time to dedicate to other things than any other time in your life. I was incredibly privileged that I didn't have rent to pay. I'm from Dublin, and that I had no other real true responsibilities. I worked in a bar to cover my expenses. So when I was in Trinity, it was this unique period where I was surrounded by these incredibly intelligent people and an ecosystem that supported it. So as we joked about, as soon as I started working on an idea, I did the Dragon's Den competitions. I did the Tangent sprints with Joe in there. And as soon as the first day I spent in the classrooms in Trinity College with 3 of the computer science students working on our first idea, I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then Trinity for the next 3 years just became this bubble of, you were never weird or off or anything you wanted to do. And I think that was great. And being in the Tangent space was great, because even in my course, after I'd been building Bounce for like 1.5 years, people still asked me what I was going to do when I left college. And I was like, I'm doing Bounce. Like, what do you mean? Like, they were still, are you not going to PwC? Or are you not doing X, Y, and Z? So going into my bubble in Tangent or in Launchbox and speaking to people like Demi or David Ola or any of these people who were kind of crazy in a very good way was really comforting, because I was like, okay, we're all doing this. Like, this is normal. And there's no way I would be building Bounce if I didn't go to Trinity. That's an absolute fact.
You know, it's really good to hear that. Iseult Ward, the founder and CEO of FoodCloud. So Iseult and FoodCloud won Launchbox back in 2013, and it's an incredible success today, feeding one person every 2 seconds. But she always talks about this idea of one Friday she had a conversation with one of the supermarkets in town, and the guy told her, "You don't be silly. This is a really bad idea. Stop pursuing it." Essentially sapping her energy from her. But she knew on Monday morning she had to come in and participate on the program, and her peers would be there. And it's so important to have the programs like Launchbox, where it's like when your energy is depleted, when you've been knocked to the ground, I guess. And she was about to give up. If she didn't have that program, she said Food Cloud wouldn't exist today. But to be able to come back in on Monday morning and kind of like be re-energized with your other co-founders, and I don't mean co-founders within Bounce or Promotion or Beats, I'm talking about your co-founders within the program. It's that kind of like support network. So it's no, it's really important, and it's great to you hear that. Kind of like on a tangible message or note, like an area that I'm really passionate about is this idea of resilience, right? And it's resilience within the startup. I'm sure I don't need to say anything to you guys about resilience, but I would love to understand, like, how do you develop resilience? And like, I guess resilience is dealing with failure and how you approach failure. So maybe Charlie, continue if you want to continue on if you want to give us some kind of like your insights there.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few things. Yeah, again, it's an area that I think about, and a lot is about that. And I think what is it? Great expectations. Charles Dickens is like suffering is greater than all other teaching. And I think the longer you're in a startup, the more you internalize that to be the case, because it's inevitable that you will get embarrassed, that you will make a really big mistake, that you'll mistreat someone in the company in some way that you didn't mean to, but was unintentional. And you'll feel horrible about yourself. There'll be uncontrollables like COVID or the war in Ukraine or any of these things that could take your business all over the place. And there's a few things that I actually do personally that try and like mitigate this. So one is removing your identity from the startup. I'm 25. Most of my friends are in Australia or doing their accountancy exams or whatever it is. I'm the only one who cares more like than anything about what I'm doing. And that's really helpful, because when I go for a walk with my friends, they don't care about how Bounce is doing. Like, they absolutely do not care. They just want to talk to me. And separating my identity from Bounce is really important, because whether Bounce is a 100 million company or fails tomorrow, my parents will still love me. I'll still have the same friends, and I'll still do the same thing on the weekends. And that's a really, really helpful thing, because it's just my job. And when things go really, really badly, knowing that the like internal locus of control remains the same is really, really helpful. Because similar to what you were saying about Isolt, is I could have an amazing Wednesday. We can land a massive deal. And it's like, it brings the highs down a bit, but it also brings the lows up. And that's a really helpful thing that I do. And it takes time. You can never fully remove your identity. We all have egos. We all care a lot about what we're building, but reminding yourself consistently, that's important. And then the second thing is kind of tied to that, is just control what you can. When something fails, look back at how you handled the situation and control what would you learn from that. But don't beat yourself up about things you couldn't control. You know, it's not my fault, the decisions of others or other things that happen. And then the third thing is you become immune to it. Like, my girlfriend would joke with me being like, we're like, "Oh, how was your day at work?" And she was like, "Oh, this thing happened." And then I would be like, "Oh, I had to let someone go who has 2 kids and we lost our biggest customer." And yeah, it was actually a pretty good day. You know, like, it's just this immunity you build up and you become better at it. So the first time it happens to you, it's going to feel like the worst thing ever. A year later, it's going to feel like nothing. And that's helpful, because back to my first point, it's just business. It's just what you're building. And for me, I know other entrepreneurs are very different. And I think because I'm not building a social enterprise like Food Cloud or something that is transforming people's lives, I'm just in helping big brands. It helps me separate myself from what I'm doing. So that's what I do, but it may not work for everyone.
Charlie, I just want to say thank you. It's like you said, you're just 25. It's like I'm 45, and it's like that advice, I need to take it on board myself. And there's mindfulness and wisdom there. And like we do talk a lot about, and hopefully you pick this up from the programs as well, this idea of failing forward. But also, like, I think the idea of failing forward, like, actually, if you can create situations nearly on a daily basis that builds up your immunity to that sense of failure, to build up your ability to be resilient, I think it's a really nice idea. Demi, do you have some advice about resilience and dealing with failure?
Yeah, I probably deal with failure a lot better than I deal with success, to be fair. You know, I think a lot of it comes from my background. So I came to Ireland 4 years old as an asylum seeker from Nigeria with my parents. And for a lot of my childhood, it was pretty tough. We lived in not so nice areas and all that kind of stuff. I think now I carry that on into entrepreneurship because I put everything in perspective, that if I have an investor meeting or I'm pitching to a client or something like that, it's important and I want it to go well, but it's not that important at the end of the day. I have shelter, I have food. I'm not going to die if they say no. And I keep that, deeply ingrained in my mind. And I think it gives me a lot of confidence as well that you put everything into perspective, that, like Charlie said, you are not your business, you are not your idea. And if you operate from that frame of mind, it's very empowering. It allows you to make better decisions. If you need to make a tough decision and let someone go or decide to walk away from this investment, like you're okay with doing that because you are not your startup. You're still Charlie. I'm still Bidemi. It's not one and the same. I think that's really important. And in startups and in business, resilience is very, very important. You will have some days where things are going fantastic, on top of the world. You're going to be, you're going to be a billionaire by the end of the year. And you'll have some days where you feel like everything is falling apart and it's not working. So it's really important to be able to manage those highs and lows. And I think by detaching yourself from your business or from your detaching yourself it's very helpful, and it'll allow you to manage those highs and those lows better.
Very good. I know when I mentor some of the students, I always talk about this idea of like compassion as well, but compassion for yourself. And like, look, sometimes the word failure is not the right word, but it's okay to fail, right? And it's okay to feel bad, but compartmentalize it and kind of go like, what I'll do, my own personal trick is to kind of like, okay, something goes wrong, allow myself to fail crappy for like a day, go home and have a couple of glasses of wine or do whatever you want to do, but the following day at 10 o'clock it's like snap out of it, move on, put it behind you. And what was it, maybe the post game analysis, what was it that happened that made you feel crappy, and how can you prevent that from happening in the future? Kira, what are your tips and tricks for everybody online today?
Yeah, look, I think entrepreneurship is a long journey, and no matter how long you're in it, it feels long. There's going to be ups and downs on the road. For me, what's kind of got me through those challenges is that connection to the why. I must say it remains today. Any challenges kind of pale in comparison to what our users face every day and achieve. But I think that connection to that vision, in the toughest of times, that's what's going to get you through. So even we now primarily sell to the pharmaceutical industry, to payer industry, but last week I met with a number of our users who've been on our technologies for 6 years, one-to-one, just sitting down with them and just understanding why you continue to push every day through the tough days and the good days, because this is why it matters. And I think that connection to the end picture is what pushes you forward. Our users have been great. When we first helped with walking, they came back to us and said, any chance of something for speech and fine motor? We proudly presented solutions and assessments for speech and fine motor, and they said, thanks very much, that's great. Any chance of a cure? They keep pushing you, and I think it's a measure of success to look back on the work that you've done and think you can do it better now, because that shows you're growing, you're learning, and you're improving. So for me, look, I think that the failures, the tough times are part of the journey, but if you keep connected to where you're going, ultimately that helps you steer the big ship in the right direction when things hit stormy waters, as inevitably they do in entrepreneurship.
I really like that, having a very clear vision, knowing where you're going, having your kind of like 5-year plan, your 10-year plan. That's essentially what you're saying, is like get you up in the morning and kind of like, it's like, okay, well, we may have had a problem yesterday or we may have a problem right now, but ultimately our journey is bigger than the problem. Really, really nice advice. Apologies if there's a little bit of noise. It sounds like we have a little bit of a party happening outside. So I want to ask you a question. Biggest thing you've learned since setting up and running your own company? Kira, it's like, I think based on what you've just said, having a very strong vision, maybe you can talk to us about the biggest learning that you've had.
Yeah, I suppose my biggest one, it would be relevant to any industry, whatever area you're going into. I still fundamentally think that mentorship is a huge aspect in hacking growth. We're very lucky, and I think it comes back to Badami's point about what you see you can be, right? And I'm very lucky to have a chairperson, Katrina Hallahan, who's previously the MD of Microsoft. Not only does she inspire, but I aspire to her success, but also her leadership style. And being able to be mentored by someone like that, I think is so important. And I think it allows you to let some of the doubts fall away in terms of, I know, again, Jamie, you were saying around that feeling of like, I'm a pharmacist, do I have it all? No one has it all. If you have a business degree, you still don't have it all. If you have a non-business related field, you still don't have it all. And even if you're 20 years, 30 years in business, you still won't know it all. So I think just make that like lack of assumptions that you know it all is a strength. And then going and finding that information and testing it and seeing what you can see you agree with, you don't agree with, you can build on that. So for me, I think the biggest and most universal advice I'd have would be to seek out the mentors that aren't exactly like you, but have the skills or have the things that you want to learn from and grow with.
I can say firsthand, Ciara, that if you're a business student, you know the least. So don't let that discourage anyone else.
There's a strength as well in that. There's a strength as well in that, right?
Yeah. You know, it's we get it quite here a lot. So in terms of this idea of imposter syndrome, right? So, but then I can see you shaking your head as well. So we run maybe 5 or 6 postgraduate programs, and the average age on our program is about 45 years of age. A lot of people on their first day participating on the postgraduate in innovation and entrepreneurship, they will like it's a real nervous energy. It's really kind of like, it's like, should I be here? I don't believe I should be, you know. It's like, but we go to lengths to demonstrate you deserve to be here, and that's the point. Actually, it's like you have your own life experience, your own kind of like values and wisdom to do something. But it's finding those people who can support you on that journey, finding those mentors and people who can fill in the gaps if there are. Well, of course, there will be gaps to fill in the gaps that you need to fill in.
And there's no definitive answers. You can't go to Trinity Library and pick up a book with a blueprint on how to succeed in your business. It doesn't exist. And there's no one person who'll have all the answers for you. But there is, set your goals, bring the right people around and give it a shot. And that still sometimes means a pivot, you know, and always assuming I might be wrong and keep validating, am I right, am I wrong, and change in response to that.
Really, that was so good. Charlie, it sounds like you've got something to say around that. The biggest lesson you've learned since setting up and running your own company.
Yeah, I think it's not a new wisdom, but every problem is a people problem. Whether it's investors, whether it's customers, whether it's employees, whether it's yourself. I think the biggest learning I've made is how important communication is, but listening being the most important part of that communication skill set. So for me, every single problem we've encountered as a business could have been maybe slightly prevented or can certainly be resolved through people skills. So one of the most important things when we're hiring, or particularly at senior talent, we just hired the first person onto our executive team ever. And one of the highest things we ranked for in the interviewing process was culture fit, people management, because like, as I said, I'm young. It's the first time I'm ever doing this. So almost I'm inherently hiring in a role model, similar to what Ciara was saying, that I can learn from, who has that experience. And for me, biggest learning is that, and learning how to be a good communicator, giving direct feedback, no compliment sandwiches and all our, whatever they're called in feedback, giving good feedback, listening to people, actually listening to people, understanding that incentives is what motivates everyone, not just physical incentives, but career progression, challenge, enjoyment, psychological safety. When you're listening to speaking to a customer, if you're demoing your product and you're speaking more than the customer, you're doing it wrong. You listen to pain points, you listen to the problems. It's all about customization. So from investing, understanding egos and understanding incentives of VCs, everything is a people problem. And the better you get at understanding people, the better decisions you make and the better business you will run. Like the obvious example is like VCs. Everyone's like, why? This is so annoying. VCs, why won't they give me money? Why won't they give me money? For us, we went private angel route in our fundraising because we knew that their entire business model is 1 in 10 goes to $1 billion. If our expected value doesn't enter into their equation, it doesn't make sense. It's nothing personal. Delta, Elkstone, and none of these people, it's not personal that they dislike me or dislike our business. It's an economic decision for them. I'm great friends with all the VCs. But for us, it's when you understand incentives, you understand people, you make better decisions. And I wish I could have gone back and told myself that in the early days. I was your classic demo end to end, don't listen to people, tell, speak. And now, despite what you might think after just speaking straight for like 4 minutes, I actually have gotten better at that.
Very good. It's like, so it's communication and listening. I'm just to let everybody know, we've got about 5 minutes left, maybe a little less time. And then we will have Q&A. So if anybody listening today wants to ask a question of any of our panelists, please send through questions now. Demi, over to you on the same question. Biggest thing you've learned on the journey?
I'd say the biggest thing I've learned is to enjoy the process, you know, and not be so fixated on the outcome. My favorite quote it's from Elon Musk, and it's that being a business owner or being a founder, it's like eating glass and staring into the abyss. It's really important that, you know, that you go on this journey for the right reasons, because it's very, very difficult. I think it's very difficult. And I think you know, with social media, everyone's kind of like, you know, move away from the 9 to 5, be your own boss, you know, but it's very, very difficult. And it's important that you're doing it for the right reasons, and that you enjoy the process of what you're doing, and not be so fixated on the outcome, you know, and not just, you know, the outcome in many cases, you know, will be an exit. You know, we want to sell for 50 million, 100 million. You might never get to that point. But it's really important that you enjoy that process. You know, day in, day out, you have meetings, you have challenges, that you embrace that. I think, Charlie, you said that once you start working on your first idea, you realize that this is what you wanted to do for the rest of your life. And, you know, be it that idea or whatever it is that you may be doing. I think it was the same for me too. I just realized that I wanted to be solving problems. I wanted to be challenged day in, day out. And that's why I'm doing this. So yeah, just to summarize, enjoy the process and don't be so fixated on the outcome.
That's great. I didn't hear the eating glass and staring into the abyss quote before. It sounds kind of like it's not the most appealing. Kind of like, it's like, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? It sounds like all of you are kind of like adrenaline junkies for the adventure that has been your journey of an idea. So thanks for sharing for sharing your insights and wisdom there. About maybe 1 minute left. I'm going to ask a really straightforward question. The one thing you wish somebody told you before you started a company. Ciara, do you want to start off?
Back yourself. I'll go with the themes that we've been talking about today. Back yourself. If you have an idea, you're passionate about it, back yourself to do it. Okay, perfect. Back yourself. Charlie?
Yeah, mine is almost identical to Demi. It's going to be longer and harder than you could ever imagine. So enjoy the process, and the destination shall look after itself. That is exactly on the exact same as Bidemi. Everything he said, I was just nodding, because it's my exact thought process on entrepreneurship is getting into it for the right reasons.
Excellent. Bidemi?
I'd say, yeah, just enjoy the process.
Enjoy the process. Okay, so it is the journey of an idea, and look, I really appreciate kind of like the insight, wisdom, and knowledge that you've shared with us today. If anybody at home is listening and they're inspired, whether you're a student, we're here on the first floor of the business school. Tangent, Trinity's Ideas Workspaces is where it's all happening. Also, if there's alumni listening, we're always full to capacity. We've always just loads of students kind of like wishing to participate in programs, and we just don't have enough capacity. So if you're an alumni and you're interested in supporting Tangent, please don't hesitate to get in touch. So I am looking here to see what questions we have coming in. So bear with me a second. So Q&A. So from Sharon Matthews, what about social enterprises and supports? I have a natural sciences background. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. We have a position in Tangent around social entrepreneurship. We don't discriminate from like an idea. Essentially, the journey of an idea, it can be a social enterprise, commercial enterprise, cultural enterprise, whatever it might be. We look at the person, we look at the quality of that idea, and we help shape that idea and turn it into a narrative. Does anybody have any opinions or kind of like on that?
I think social enterprise, perhaps in a better position, because you're doing it because you want to do good, you want to create value. And yeah, you're in a better position, and your challenges will be no different to if you're a for-profit entrepreneur. Exact same challenges that you face, ups and downs, but it's great that you're doing it from a place of good, that you want a better world, that you want to do better. Yeah, that's kind of my advice.
I think I like the skill set, like from an entrepreneurial perspective, whether it's a social entrepreneur, whether it's commercial, whether you're focused on commercial or whatever it might be. I think you need to have the same mentality, values. And Anthony Hopper actually asked the question: what skills do you think are the most valued in setting up, running your own company? Charlie, do you have
a... both for hiring and for new founders, I would say soft skills, communication, collaboration. You have to be able to work with other people of all types, whether it's like teammates or clients. You have to understand people work. And then it's the classic cliche one, but resilience. I would say they're the three that I'd focus on. And if I was at a fourth, is like always trying to be better through mentorship, through upskilling. Like anyone who's following AI at the moment, I'm sure Bademi's world, like you can never keep up. So whatever domain you're in, from CEO and founder right down to graduate entrant into a company, and showing that appetite to learn is absolutely essential.
Yeah, continuous learning. It's exactly why we're here. I've been listening to a few podcasts about AI recently, and like it's mind-boggling kind of like how complicated, I guess, it's becoming for people to even to adopt to a changing world, and it's so quick. Ciara, do you have any opinions, or like from a values perspective, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I think just on the social entrepreneur one very quickly, I do think Social Entrepreneurs Ireland is also one worth considering for that person. Great familiarity with this industry, and talk about failure. We were a failed applicant and now I'm a judge. So it's in the program. So these things, they change over time. But I think just knowing that social entrepreneurship and how you build the sustainability. In terms of skills, yeah, I mean, potentially the theme we've talked about today as well is it's very important to have those people skills across anything, and finding the right people around you and working with the right people, and whether it's sales or product. It does come back to some of the points Charlie was saying around people.
Yeah, I think just to reinforce that point, like this idea of soft skills or transversal skills, it's something that is built into like Tangent. It's an experiential and applied unit. So we do teach the theory, but everybody has to pitch. Everybody learns how to kind of like stand up in front of whoever your potential customers are and learn to pitch your idea, how to clearly communicate, etc. I think it leads on nicely here. Ciara mentioned the value of mentorship. Any tips, advice on how to best to approach mentorship or acquiring a mentor? I'll just jump in there. It's like, if that's a Trinity student, or if somebody who's involved in Trinity, like, come to Tangent, we have our panel of mentors that are available for students, etc. You guys may have different messages as well. Ciara, seeing as that you mentioned mentors, do you want to maybe talk to
Yeah, I suppose it's two tips I'd have. In the early days, we were participated in a Google Black Box program in Silicon Valley, and the first thing they taught us was how to ask for money, how to ask for mentorship, and actually literally practice. Would you mind? Could you do? Can I have? As simple as just ask. And you think it's easy, but it actually is a skill that you need to build. The second is to put the why out there. The wrong people might think you're mad. The right people will get it and want to join you on that journey and will come into your picture. But the more you share that why, that journey, that destination you're going on, that allows people to decide whether that's a journey they want to come on with you and they agree with and they believe in, or they don't. And it's okay if they're either. But when we look at the most successful businesses in the world, I mean, Airbnb got laughed out of the room, rejected multiple times, that'll never work. I'm often dubious about the solutions that get yeses straight away. Absolutely, this makes sense. Because I wonder, does it exist before? Why it doesn't? Is it too obvious? Versus the ones that, there'll be people who get it and people that don't. And you'll find them by putting out exactly what it is you're trying to build. And that comes back to your training. Hard skills, Ken, which is training on pitching and presenting and messaging and clarity and communication. But yeah, number one, learn to ask. And number two, find them by putting out what you want.
No, that's great. And Charlie and Bademi, I don't know if you remember during Launchbox, one of the pieces of advice that would have been shared by Brian Caulfield, one of the most successful VCs in the country, is like, if you're looking for money, ask for advice. And if you're looking for advice, ask for money. I always kind of like think about that as a nice, no, people want to help. There's a natural inbuilt desire for people wanting to help. They don't maybe open up their wallets as quickly, but if you're seeking help and you're responding kind of like to the advice you're getting, it's
no, I think the thing with mentorship as well is like, view it, and if you view it in a very kind of first principles way, what I still have to this day and what I had in the very early days is I identified every skill gap and knowledge gap that I had. I found people who had solved those problems before, and I leveraged the hell out of my position. Anyone will meet a high energy student with a direct ask who's authentic and actually wanting to listen. Anyone will meet you. And like, even to this day, if I get messages on LinkedIn, I do my very best to give anyone time if they have those things right. Their ask is direct, they're authentic in what they're trying to build, and they know where I can specifically help. Because the first 2 years of Bounce was just that. I set a target with myself. Like, I'm not surprised if there's some people on LinkedIn who genuinely think I was harassing them, because I messaged so many people looking for advice. And to this day, it's the best thing ever, because as Kira said, I didn't know anything, but standing on the shoulders of giants, I probably have met every founder, every VC, every angel in the country before I'd even launched Bounce. Because all I wanted to do was sit there and listen. And almost anyone, now I can't anymore, like, people will stop replying to me as much. But when you're a student and when you're early stage, most people will meet you for that exact reason, that people want to help. And I think the Irish ecosystem is incredible for that. Be part of the communities, be part of the associations, and follow the people who are operating in the space that can give you help.
Wonderful. Well, we've time for one more question, and Kira, I think this is well, it's open to everybody, but if Kira, I think you'll have some great insight into this. It's from Sharon Matthews. Are there any extra challenges on being heard and taken seriously as a woman?
I think we talk to diversity. You know, this is not a unique issue for women. It exists in the industry, it exists in business, it exists in the world. I suppose how I work with that is, I think it's incredibly important to find the right investors, the right partners, the right mentors, and keeping that very important in your approach to things. Yes, there will be people who don't see it, and that's, for me, okay. Can't always change that, but you have to persevere and push ahead. Separately, building your own business, building your own success, and backing yourself with the right people around you is certainly a way to target that and maybe change the game over time with greater diversity within companies, both large and small, startups, etc. That's what I think will change this in the long term. But in the short term, it's really about finding the right partners, the right investors, and walking away from things that might not be right for you or equally right for them, whatever those reasons might be.
Yeah, and maybe for just to talk about, again, bringing this back to Trinity and Tangent for a second. So we do have a Women Who Wow program in Trinity. So it's a female mentorship program where we match female leaders and entrepreneurs with female students. And this idea that, Demi, you mentioned this earlier on, if you can't see it, you can't be it type thing. So that program, it's run here from Tangent, but the number, like, we've had maybe 130 female students participate in that over the past 5 or 6 years. And the numbers, the success rate in terms of those who go on to be entrepreneurs is like about a third, which is a great number. But I do think that there's lots of supports for mentorship, and if you're kind of like, if you're enthusiastic and want to get involved in entrepreneurship, whether male or female, I think Trinity has an absolutely fantastic ecosystem. So I think we've reached 2 o'clock, or nearly, we're coming up to 2 o'clock. So I just want to thank everybody on the panel today. Kira Clancy from Beats Medical, Demi Afolabi, Promotion Rewards, and Charlie Butler from Bounce Insights. Thank you so much for such an interesting conversation today. I hope we've inspired many people to get involved in innovation and entrepreneurship, especially from a Trinity perspective. As I said, if the student's listening and interested in becoming involved, first floor in the business school is where Tangent is. And if there's any alumni listening and really have been inspired by what they've heard today, we'd love to hear from you as well. So I'm going to hand back over to Brian to finish up today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ken, for leading such a thought-provoking and entertaining discussion. And to Bidemi, Kira, and Charlie for being so generous with their time and sharing their experiences and insights with us. I'd also like to thank my colleagues in the alumni office for making today's webinar possible. And thank you as well to everyone who joined us today and asked questions. It's always fantastic to have that engagement and enthusiasm. I hope you'll join us again next month as Inspiring Ideas at Trinity welcomes Professor Andrew Murphy to discuss the first collected edition of Shakespeare's plays, the 1623 first folio, explore the history of its publication, the plays we could have lost without it, and how Trinity College Dublin possesses Ireland's only copy. Afterwards, Professor Murphy will lead a lively discussion on Shakespeare in Ireland with panelists Lynn Parker, who's Artistic Director of Rough Magic Theatre Company, and Dr. Stephen O'Neill, Associate Professor of Shakespeare Studies, Maynooth University. Details on how to register for the next webinar will be sent by email and posted to social media in the coming days. If you have any questions or comments regarding this webinar series or any other questions you'd like to ask us here at the Alumni Office, please email us at alumni@tcd.ie. Thank you again for joining us today, and we hope you'll join us again next month. Goodbye.